This is the July meeting of the Arroyo Currents with all the latest news about what's going on in the Arroyo and other things related to the Arroyo and to environmental issues that concern all of us who live in Pasadena and in the Arroyo Seco region. Tonight, we start with news about the Arroyo Seco Canyon Project, and we've listed this meeting as being a meeting that will talk a lot about the trout in the Arroyo and the trout issue, since that's one of the main issues being dealt with regard to the Arroyo Seco Canyon Project. But we started on this process a long time ago, actually, and started doing these video meetings, these Zoom meetings, right in the middle of the pandemic. And actually, the process with regard to the Arroyo Seco Canyon Project began more than a year before that. And then they went through the environmental impact report. And in the summer, we responded to the issues that we saw in the draft environmental impact report that we felt were inadequate. And then in December, they released the final environmental impact report, if you remember, 2 days before Christmas. They were supposed to have a hearing. They did have a hearing on it on January 6th. So we began really 7 months ago with a series of meetings online that I think represent a really tremendous community educational effort that's good to kind of review what's going on. It started way back in November, I believe, with a long meeting such as this on Pasadena's water crisis. And then after that, we did a project, we did a show in December, which was What's Wrong with the Arroyo Seco Canyon Project, which is the same song that we're still singing, so that was 6 months ago. And you can see there that was an hour and 39 minutes. So that was a long meeting. And a lot of you participated in it and attended. I've got a few people I want to let in the room here, and we'll let them in. And there we go. And then we had we began meetings we had a few about the fish issues. And in early February, we issued this short little video, which I'm not sure if all of you have seen it. It's really worth it. It's only 1 minute and 31 seconds here. And oops. And we'll start right there.
Water from the Arroyo Seco. If approved, it would expand facilities at the mouth of the river at Ha'amungna Watershed Park and severely impact the health of one of Los Angeles' most vital ecological lifelines.
Exploring Ha'amungna, it's hard to miss the series of unsightly barren pits lining the east side of the park. Spreading basins are man-made zones intended to allow water to percolate into the groundwater beneath. By diverting water from the stream into these areas during large rain events, Pasadena receives credit to pump water out of Raymond Basin.
However, Pasadena's spreading basins are highly problematic. Firstly, they are rarely used, as we seldom receive sufficient rainfall to fill them. The depressions collect hydrophobic sediment in which little can grow other than invasive weeds. The city must then pay to run heavy equipment over them to mitigate fire risk, further impacting the soil and reducing drainage. Thus, much of the water evaporates off the surface. In spite of these issues, PWP wants to expand these facilities, converting an area previously slated for restoration into 6 new pits.
Ha'amungna contains 5 habitats unique to the canyons of Southern California. Due to development, sites like these have become increasingly rare and precious. In a critical area like the Arroyo Seco, a healthy stream zone would be a more efficient, environmentally sound way to conserve water.
An environmentally superior alternative can conserve water, protect the natural resources of Ha'amungna, and allow the stream itself to replenish the Raymond Basin beneath Pasadena. Don't let Pasadena and the Arroyo go the way of other lost treasures in California. Sign and share the petition now.
Coming soon after that, we did the premiere of Against the Currents, which was actually the little video that we did with regard to the LA River Fish Passage program. And this was a broader meeting. This was a noon meeting that we did, which actually talks about that program, which is developing a design to accommodate steelhead trout in downtown Los Angeles, right near the confluence of the Arroyo Seco. So following up on that, we did a program just a month ago on the Big Drain, which has a lot of information about it. There was in February, we did a program on Till the Well Runs Dry. And then in April, we found out that without our knowledge or doing in any way, I swear, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife had moved 469 rainbow trout from the West Fork of the San Gabriel River into the Arroyo Seco in the area between basically the JPL Bridge up to Brown Mountain Dam. And so there had been some doubt. The city of Pasadena expressed a doubt that there were any fish in the arroyo. The whole time we've been maintaining that indeed there were fish, but that they hadn't really looked carefully enough for them. But that issue was really very much resolved when the California Department of Fish and Wildlife did their translocation of fish. And this was after the Bobcat fire occurred over in the area of the West Fork, which is just over the hill. For those of you who know your geography well, it's just over the hill from the Arroyo Seco into the watershed of the San Gabriel River. And it's a very big trout stream, as a matter of fact. And then we reposted a little video that we actually did 4 years ago, this month actually, when the city council actually authorized the environmental impact report for the Arroyo Seco Canyon Project, because that video, it's a 17-minute video, and it tells the story about the long delays in the Arroyo Seco Canyon Project, as well as the judge's order in 2017 with regard to the Arroyo Seco Canyon Project. And it has a lot of discussion about the role that the Arroyo Seco Foundation played in initiating the Arroyo Seco Canyon Project, another generation of the Arroyo Seco Canyon Project. And it kind of emphasizes for us our angst at being effectively excluded from a lot of input on the project as it came down to the wire. And so we no longer claim any pride of authorship with regard to the project at this point. So, but we are trying to work positively to make it be a better project. And then we had, oh, there's Angel. Look at Angel, our star here. And
of Education for the Arroyo Seco Foundation. And I'm here to talk to you about the Arroyo Seco Canyon Project, Pasadena Water and Power's plan to divert more water from the beautiful historic Arroyo Seco, the historic and current home of rainbow trout and the future steelhead trout, as well as species of concern, the two-striped garter snake and the California newt. However, the future of these species is threatened. As you can see behind me, this is where Pasadena diverts their water from the Arroyo Seco. The large gate that you see there is meant to block debris, but fish and other wildlife can get stuck in there and die. What's worse is the little amount of water left for the Arroyo Seco after Pasadena's water diversions. With the summer months still ahead for us, as you can see, there's hardly any water left for wildlife as well as habitat. On June 7th, Pasadena City Council will vote to divert even more water from the Arroyo Seco. We urge you to contact your city council member and the city clerk and tell them we do not want the Arroyo Seco Canyon Project, and that any project in the future must be sustainable to the Arroyo Seco and to its inhabitants. Let the river flow. Thank you.
And so, of course, the June 7th meeting, we actually submitted a settlement proposal at that time. And on that basis, the city council delayed the discussion and be Monday night. But it's so with that, we want to move on to a discussion by some of the participants and some of the people who have really been leading the effort to take a critical look at the Arroyo Seco Canyon Project and to improve it. And so we, the first one who's going to speak is Laura Solomon, who is the president of the Pasadena Audubon Society.
Hi there, Tim. Thank you. Are you enabling me to share my screen?
Yes, you are now enabled to share your screen.
Awesome. So I'd like to thank Tim for his leadership on this and also for inviting Pasadena Audubon to participate. And that voice you just heard was Mark Hunter, who until the end of June was our conservation chair and is still, and has been leading the charge on this for our chapter and is still working on this because he cares about it so much. So thank you, Mark, for that. I'm not an expert. I just like to look at birds. But there is a lot of biodiversity in Hahamanga, and I'm sure a lot of you could talk a lot more about that than I can. So I'm just going to show you some really pretty pictures, and you can enjoy some of the flora and fauna that rely on Hahamanga and the water up there. So I have to start with the birds. It's not just about the trout. We love the trout, but it's not just about the trout. There's a lot of other critters that live up there too. And we have some members of our chapter who bird there every day. And Hahamanga is the first place that my son went birding when he was 8 years old and was a brand new little birder. And so it's always been near and dear to my heart. And just look at all the numbers of species that live there. And very especially in 2020, we had a successful nesting and fledging of the federally endangered least-billed vireo. So, and you know, as the habitat has been taken away by the big dig, what's left becomes increasingly important. So if you haven't had a chance to go birding up there, please go. There are still birds, they still live there. Audubon has walks every month, so you're welcome to join us and go look at the beautiful birds of Hahamanga. I don't like to read slides to people, so if you have questions, you can put them in the chat. And as you saw from the video, there are 5 different kinds of habitats in Hahamanga, and you probably have all been to the nursery, the Hahamanga, that's in Hahamanga, the Arroyo Seco Foundation nursery. I bought some plants there, and so we know that, you know, with 5 different habitats, and we know that where habitats meet, that's where we have the most biodiversity. So because those habitats are all, you know, jumped right next to each other, we're going to have a lot of biodiversity in the basin. So we got to keep the water there for the plants. And mule fat, shown here, is critically important for birds. It's just one of the most important plants for them because a lot of caterpillars can eat mule fat. Mule fat is a host to a lot of different caterpillars. So, and birds rely on that when they're breeding. So really important. It's not just an old, you know, scrubby weed. It's a critically important plant for birds. And of course, a lot of insects. And you've probably heard in the news about the insect apocalypse, how we're losing our insects, overuse of pesticides and loss of habitat are 2 main reasons. And so places like Hahamanga become even more important. Really, to me, feels like an island that's surrounded by a lot of development. And so, you know, each time we chip away at more, we lose critical habitat for these animals who have just as much of a right to be on the planet as we do. And of course, everyone likes mammals. I do too. And I'm sure some of you have seen bobcats in there, or coyotes, bats, pretty cool stuff. And we know that mountain lions go through there and bears as well. So it's really an important wildlife corridor down through the Arroyo. And reptiles as well. I know I've seen some blotched lizards there, and I don't know what kind of snake I saw one time, but it was not a rattlesnake. So thank goodness for that, but it's pretty awesome. So go check it out. And even amphibians, and I worry about amphibians because we know from, you know, as we're going through this massive extinction, amphibians are really, really threatened because of their very thin, delicate skin. And so places like I said before, places like Hahamanga just become islands for them to live on. It's like Noah's Ark. And species, that's pretty darn good. Let's hang on to it. So, and I'd like to thank Lois Brunet, our program director, for putting the slides together for me, since I lack any technical skill whatsoever. And she got the information from iNaturalist. So if you don't already have iNaturalist on your phone, it's a really great app. I use it to tell the difference between plants I want to keep and weeds in my garden. And you can log what you see, and it's just amazing. If you look at iNaturalist, you see what a biodiverse hotspot Hahamanga is. So we have to do everything we can to keep it as natural as we can. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you. All right.
I'll stop sharing now.
Okay, good. All right. Now, coming up next is a fellow who's been real critical in the evaluation and analysis of the Arroyo Seco Canyon Project, as well as Pasadena's 25-year plan for water, the water system and resources plan. And he served on that task force. He's a veteran engineer who has worked previously, spent his life working in water resource issues with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, as well as with the Metropolitan Water District of Southern California. His name is Ken Cools, and we'll turn it over to you, Ken. And I got the sound there for you too, Ken, so.
Thanks. Okay. Again, my name's Ken Cools. I'm a licensed civil engineer and 29-year Pasadena resident. I'm going to be sharing with you this evening the presentation that I've developed to give to the City Council that was supposed to be on the 12th. And just to make a small amendment, the hearing for the 12th next Monday has not actually been rescheduled. There is a recommendation that the City Council authorize or approve continuing the hearing until the 19th, a week. So there's no certainty that we won't have to go through the hearing on Monday, but it looks likely that it'll be on the 19th. So in any case, here goes with my presentation. I'll start with a discussion of infiltration of flows in the stream bed. This slide shows an aerial view. This slide shows a series of photographs on the left that are keyed on the right-hand side as photographs 1, 2, and 3. These are taken by Hugh Bowles on January 28th, 2021. And what he observed is that in the distance between photograph 1, which is taken upstream of the JPL bridge, and photograph 3, that in that 1,200 foot reach, the flow dwindled from what appears to be a couple of CFS to being non-existent. The water has disappeared into the ground. And the flow at the diversion dam at that point was 3.1 CFS. What's meaningful about this is that we've been talking about the fact that the Arroyo Seco has the ability to absorb a fair amount of flow naturally. And Pasadena has rejected that idea. And in fact, in a video that they showed in previous hearings, they showed that at 3 CFS, the water was actually flowing through the dam, which is not true, as you can see in this picture. And what this picture translates to is that in the reach that we've shown here, the 1,200 foot reach, the percolation is about 13 CFS per mile in this instance, which is actually about double what was originally estimated by Philip Williams Associates in 2000. So I'm going to start with analysis that some of you may have seen the similar analysis that I've shown before. This slide, I analyze a change in infiltration with the ASCP for a scenario in which the stream flow is 19 CFS, as shown here. The legend explains the symbols that I've used to show that for the existing condition, 18 CFS will be diverted and 1 CFS will bypass the diversion and remain in the stream. That flow will be joined by 1 CFS coming from Millard Canyon, and the total flow in the stream would be 2 CFS. Since that flow is well below the 13 CFS infiltration rate of the stream bed, the entire flow will be infiltrated in the stream bed and not reach Devil's Gate Dam. Under the proposed condition, and with the same 19 CFS of flow at the diversion dam, all 19 CFS will be diverted. The 1 CFS flow downstream will come from Millard Canyon, and 1 CFS will infiltrate in the stream bed. The amount of spreading will increase by 1 CFS, and Pasadena will earn 0.8 CFS in pumping credits. As shown in the table, none of the spread water will be new water, and the net impact of the groundwater basin due to pumping credits will be a loss of 0.8 CFS. It's clear from this example that the ASCP has the potential to harm the Raymond Basin. The logic from the table in the last slide is that if new water is more than the pumping credit, the impact is beneficial. is helpful to the basin. If the new water is less than the pumping credit, the impact is adverse and the basin would be harmed. Here's what the draft EIR has to say about the variables new water and pumping credit that I just talked about. I'm not going to read all of the text, but ask you to focus on the statement that the draft EIR calculations that were done only determine the amount of expected increase in water delivered to the spreading basins and not new water. They've not calculated any new water. With regard to calculation of pumping credits, the draft EIR appears to be uncertain about the percent allocation. It should be noted that the Raymond Basin judgment has no provisions for pumping credit other than 80% for surface water rights. The Raymond Basin Management Board has adopted rules and regulations that address dredgement provisions, and they too have no provisions for credits that get an allocation other than the 80% related to surface water rights. I'm going to play you a clip. The executive officer of the Raymond Basin Management Board gave a presentation to the Municipal Services Committee in May and said the following. I guess the audio isn't functioning. In any case, what you're saying in the text is what was in the audio. Basically, Tony Zampiello is casting doubts on whether the current practice of allocating credits will be sustainable and will likely be reviewed. The Raymond Basin Management Board is, this is language from CEQA regarding recirculation requirements. The relevant test is whether the draft EIR, not including the final EIR or any other document in the administrative record, if the draft EIR reaches a conclusion for which no supporting evidence is offered and that shortcoming hindered meaningful understanding of project impacts, recirculation of the draft EIR is required. The language goes on to make very limited exception for minor changes, and that recirculation need only be done regarding the resources in dispute. I don't think that any conclusion can be reached other than that the draft EIR made impact determinations without supporting evidence and must be recirculated. The Raymond Basin has not fared well under the judgment, and any adverse impact from the ASCP would exacerbate the overdraft and be significant. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
All right, are there any questions of Ken?
Thank you.
All right, and you can use the chat function if you come up with a question, something strikes you or whatever. You can use the chat function to list that, and we'll try to respond to it as well. So anyway, let's talk for just a second, Ken, about what we're discussing with the city at this point, because you can see from Ken's presentation that we have a lot of concerns about the actual hydrology related to the program and the percolation of the water and how much is going to go, how much is going to be credited for pumping rights and how much is going to go to the Raymond Basin, and which is in decline. And so we really think that those issues need to be looked at very carefully and need to be examined very carefully. So that's one of the two major topics that we're really looking at and trying to get the city to take more seriously. So we're hoping that the city council will instruct the Water and Power Department to revise that section as well as the section with regard to fish, and then recirculate the document as well after they've provided some very substantial information that's really necessary for the environmental evaluation of the project. So is there anything else you'd like to say about what we've been talking with the city about? Did you want to say something, Ken, to add to that, or Laura?
Well, I can make an observation.
Please do.
Let me get back to my PowerPoint slide here. I go to this slide here. I'm sorry, wrong slide. This slide here. Basically, what we've asked is that they do a determination of how much new water will result from the spreading, not just water that would otherwise percolate into the stream, but how much new water was being spread. and also calculate the amount of the pumping credits that would be earned. That's our basic request, is that they go through that analysis in a very deliberate and scientific way.
So could you explain what a pumping credit is?
Yeah. The idea is that if Pasadena doesn't have they have the right to divert water from the stream up to 25 CFS, but under the original judgment, they had to use that water for municipal purposes. They had to use it for irrigation or drinking water or whatever purpose. They were limited in that they couldn't use it for replenishment. In 1974, the judgment was modified to allow them to take that surface water right, percolate it into the ground, and use that percolated water as a basis for claiming additional pumping that they could do it from the groundwater above and beyond their safe yield. So they get a pumping credit from doing that percolation that's in addition to their safe yield allocation.
And Ken, we have a question from Mark Hunter, who says that Tony Zampiello seems sympathetic to new thinking about groundwater pumping rights. Does anyone know how the other members of the Raymond Basin Management Board feel about that issue? Would you like to take that, Ken?
Well, this topic hasn't come up actually at the Rainbow Basin Management Board, although if we're successful in our request from the city to do the analysis of pumping credits, it'll necessarily get to the Rainbow Basin Management Board for discussion, because there is no existing policy about how the spreading credits are managed, and they'll need to develop and agree on a pumping credit allocation process. So we expect that to be an outcome of this discussion we're having with Pasadena.
Laura, did you want to say something?
Well, yeah, I just wanted to add to that what I've noticed, I've came into this a little bit later because Mark was the one who was really advocating on our behalf. But what I've noticed at the meetings we've had with them is that they seem to assume that we're there to give them trouble, and we are really there to try to help them have a better project. I don't think they'll get the fish and wildlife permits they need to do the project as it stands. And if they would take our advice, I think they would have a better chance of getting that permit. So it really troubles me. This is my second go around now with an agency about, well, actually my third, if you count the soccer fields back in the day, but the county with the big dig and now the city with this project. And it really troubles me that, none of us are doing this for money or fame. There's no perks. Here we are, I could be, in the other room drinking something nice and watching something pleasant, and I'm hanging out with y'all, which is awesome. But we're here because we care about this place. And we also understand that what they're doing is going to, I agree with Ken, it's going to harm the basin. And it's certainly going to harm the habitat. So we just want them to try a new way of thinking, and it's not adversarial on our part. That is their position, not ours. We're really trying to help them.
I think this is what John Lewis would call good trouble.
Yes, amen to that.
Good trouble. Jamie Scott wants to say something, and you can now unmute yourself.
I was just wondering, so if the city leaves the water in the arroyo?
Yeah, that's my husband.
Yeah. If the city leaves the water in the arroyo, they don't get the pumping credit?
Under the language in the judgment, if they divert their surface water and they want to get a pumping credit, it does require them to divert the water from the channel, from the stream.
Yeah.
But our perspective is that they're asking to do something that really isn't addressed under the judgment, and that the Raymond Basin Management Board, and they have the authority to change the rules. They are the basin managers, and they have the authority to change the rules if they see that there's a reasonable reason for doing it.
Yeah, your website talks about how since 1955 or whatever, they've been allowed to take a certain amount of water out every year. Is that right? Even though the water table is dropping?
Yes, they have pumping. They have rights decreed rights, they're called, to take water out of the basin. Now that agreement that was first achieved in 1944 and was later changed in 1955 was designed originally to stabilize the level in the basin and to not let it decline and drop further. However, the reality is that since that agreement was achieved, it's called an adjudication, the groundwater level in the main part of the Raymond Basin has dropped 250 feet. So the
Right. So is that
decline has
something
been
that y'all
pretty
are
consistent.
Is that
And
that's a different issue, but is that something y'all are working on as well then?
it's a related issue, it's all tied together. So, one of our concerns is that the Arroyo Seco Canyon Project really should have a beneficial impact on the Raymond Basin, although it's not. The environmental impact report, for instance, doesn't really consider that issue carefully. They basically claim that it will have a beneficial impact, and we're saying, well, let's quantify that. Let's really determine whether it does have a beneficial impact or not.
Well, and I would offer that that issue will arise under the discussions under the Water System and Resources Plan that's following on a parallel track, which will be coming up at the end of July or the beginning of August at the Municipal Services Committee. And that broader issue of basin management and having a policy to protect and improve the basin, that will arise in that discussion.
And then finally, I just
Okay.
want to ask you about the percolation thing, because you all brought up at an earlier time the fact that it's not even proven how much water is getting to where it's supposed to go through the percolation. And they're just kind of estimating that, but they don't really know because they haven't labeled the water or whatever you need to do to follow it. Is that right?
Right. They've basically resisted quantifying how much water can spread into the stream bed, and they've challenged others' attempts to estimate it based on field investigations. So they basically don't want to know.
Yeah, there's basically a fair number of unknown quantities here in this calculation. The one thing that's very clear, though, is that the groundwater level is declining more than 3 feet each year pretty consistently, and it's not stopping. And that's very dangerous in the long run because it'll destroy the groundwater basin as a viable resource for Pasadena and surrounding communities as well.
I mean, if we have to move on, that's okay. But
Yeah,
like intuitively, it makes sense that in a what do you call those ponds? The water is sitting there. You'd think it would percolate more from those ponds than moving down the stream. It seems almost non-intuitive that you get more percolation when the water is in the stream.
well, the scientific studies that have been done on this issue indicate that the permeability of the stream itself, the stream areas, the sandy stream areas, is actually greater than the percolation basins, the spreading basins. If you go and look at the spreading basins, you'll see that the soil has a tendency to compact, and they have problems with weeds growing in them and all sorts of things like that. So the percolation rate in the spreading basins isn't really that good. And that's one of the things that should be looked at very carefully, is to compare the percolation rate in the spreading basins with the percolation rate in the stream itself. Because there should be some determination of the capacity of the natural stream hydrology to replenish the Raymond Basin, because that's what's been going on for millions of years. The spreading basins are not really ideal, and they need to be examined carefully.
But I'd offer that the real harm to the Raymond Basin would come from the allocation of pumping credits, and whether that allocation is well thought out and your pumping credits don't exceed the amount of new water that you're spreading. That is the real issue in terms of harming the Raymond Basin.
And I just want to add that I think it's kind of the height of insanity to think that you can pave over everything, pave over the entire city of Pasadena, which is almost all paved, and then expect a few little diversion ponds up in Hahamagna to make up for all that water that can't get into the ground. It all just goes down to the ocean. So and then we have people watering their emerald green lawns. I mean, my neighbor is watering now, on a very hot day. Well, actually was watering a few hours ago. So what? This is, to me, it's the height of insanity. So, I mean, I know we're just talking about this one project, but they're all connected. The water is the water. So
Yeah.
we need much bigger projects
right.
to get the water into the ground.
Well, I know a lot of people want to hear about the fish, and the fish is really a key issue here too. And we thought that, as I said earlier, we'd been saying all along that there were fish in the arroyo, that there were rainbow trout specifically in the Arroyo Seco, but that the city had done an inadequate job of looking for them, or of documenting that they're not there. We weren't the only ones that said that. The California Department of Fish and Wildlife said the same thing in their comments. But there wasn't an official response from the city until really they learned that in April, they learned that the Department of Fish and Wildlife had done a translocation program and had moved 469 trout from the West Fork of the San Gabriel River into the Arroyo Seco in the region from the JPL Bridge up to Brown Mountain Dam. So they're basically in about a 2-mile stretch there. And when we found out, we were very pleased to hear that, because it totally eliminated any doubt about the fact that there are fish there. Now, in their environmental impact report, they do outline things which they will do. They say to accommodate fish when steelhead return from the Pacific Ocean. Well, that's going to be something very difficult to achieve, and we all know that. And furthermore, that's not what the Fish and Game Code says. The California Fish and Game Code regulations do not say steelhead. They don't say trout. They say fish, F-I-S-H. So that's one of the things that we're talking very seriously with Pasadena about. Pasadena can no longer ignore that there are fish there and that they have a stewardship responsibility to protect them. It is the responsibility of water agencies to be good stewards of the natural environment that they exploit. And when they're not good stewards of the natural environment, lots of problems emerge. And we can list certain things in recent history with regard to the Bay Delta or Mono Lake or the Owens Valley or other issues as well, in which the water agencies were not good stewards of the natural environment, and it created very substantial problems in the end. And so one of the things that we're saying to Pasadena is it needs to have an integrated approach to water resource management, in which they take into account not only water resources, but they also look at the other issues that are related to a stream, such as flood management and habitat and wildlife and invasive species, and of the birds and wildlife that make up such an important part of our ecosystem. So we're talking with the city of Pasadena about that. We hope they're going to be responsive because we think that it's pretty clear in Fish and Game Code what their responsibility is. And we hope that Pasadena will recognize its role to be a good steward of the natural environment and not just an exploiter of local water resources. So with that, I want to turn it over to the education director of the Arroyo Seco Foundation, who actually has been going up into the arroyo even before we knew that the Department of Fish and Wildlife had translocated some fish. And Angel and some other of our supporters actually had found some fish even before we found out about the California Department of Fish and Wildlife thing. But Angel's the one whose picture you saw in a wetsuit and snorkeling on the front page of the Los Angeles Times on June 17th. And it's a really great picture showing what you really have to do to find fish, sometimes on a stream or river. And that, I mean, that's when you really care about the fish, that's what you do. And that's what Angel's been doing. And I think he's got a couple of other fishermen that he's going to introduce as well, who have some experience fishing the Arroyo Seco in the past, and they can tell you a little bit about their experiences. So with that, it's yours, Angel.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, LA Times got my slimmest angle, so I'm happy with that.
Yeah.
So hi, I'm Angel or Angel Pinedo. I'm the education director for the Arroyo Seco Foundation. And I do want to share at least the video that LA Times got with us, because they went out with us in the field. They did the hike. Louis Salahan and Carolyn Cole went out with us. They didn't go on the water, but they had GoPros. And so they got some recording from where we did find trout. And so I do want to share that. And after I share those videos, I do want to give it to Dustin Delaney, who's one of our volunteer citizen science Trout Scouts and snorkeling and fish finder extraordinaire. And do I have Daryl Kutanomi? Are you here? Okay, I don't think Daryl was able to make it. Stephen Huntley, I saw that you were here. Are you here, sir? Would you be, if you're here and present, because I thought I saw your name, would you be able to speak as well about your experience?
And maybe Gary
after the
too.
videos?
Gary was.
Oh yeah, because Gary's been out there with us as well.
Yeah.
Are you there, Steve? I thought.
Yeah, I'm here.
Awesome. Can you speak about your experience after I play the videos?
Certainly.
Thank you, Steve. I really much appreciate that. So let me play some of the videos first, and then we'll hear from Dustin and Stephen right after, and Gary. Let me play that right now.
No sound.
No sound? That could be an upload issue.
It's okay.
If it helps, it's just bubbles. That's all you hear. Okay. So that's one of our videos, and this was posted on the Los Angeles Times website. And let me play the other video we have. And give me a moment to bring that up. And those were the small par that we found, and we'll talk more about them particularly as well, because there is something special in that little pool that we found, and we will discuss that in a little while. But first, let me also show you a video of a very large trout that we found. And CDFW relocated fish that were only 5 inches or less. This one is much, much bigger, which is a good hope for us that they're thriving in there.
Wow, that is a big trout.
Yep. So that's looking good. And we're very proud and happy of that. And that video was taken by one of our snorkeling Trout Scouts, Dustin. And I think this is a good segue into what you would like to share about your experience, Dustin, if you'd like to right now.
Sure. Hey, everyone. Well, being able to snorkel in the Arroyo and find fish has just been a highlight of my entire year. This has been so fantastic and so exciting. I really didn't expect to find anything off the bat like I did with the other Trout Scouts. But as soon as we got in there, immediately we found a trout right at one of the man-made kind of spillways, just right at a Gold Campground. And from that point on, we were, moving up and downstream, and we've been doing a bunch of different locations throughout that Arroyo section. And I've been about out there almost once a week, sometimes twice a week, and just kind of checking on the fish. I've got a couple of spots where I know that they are, and I just want to see that they're healthy and they're doing well, and doing some rough water temperature readings, and trying to see what their feeding patterns are, and just kind of learn as much about them as I possibly can. So it's been a fantastic experience. I really think that the water management component of this is really fascinating to see the way that the city is coming up with their sort of scientific foundation of spreading basins without doing any perk tests. I think that's really fascinating. And I think that, what I haven't heard us talk about is the type of balance that this ecology needs to keep the fish alive and viable and healthy in that ecosystem. And I think having fish in that space is a great way of saying, hey, there's more cultural value here than we had expected. You know, it's one thing to know that there are some wonderful, amazing birds out there and amazing amphibians. And every time I'm out there, I see something new, and it just blows my mind. And I think that people, particularly because of the LA Times article, relate to fish a lot. You know, people that sport fish kind of all over can see this and see that there's now a new meaningful cultural component to the Arroyo Seco that touches a broader audience. For the city of Pasadena to be able to say, hey, we have trout 10 minutes from our downtown, this is an incredible opportunity that the city could produce a cultural program around that in the same way that I would imagine places like Jackson Hole or anywhere in Montana. You know, this is something so unique that if the story was told, if the narrative was crafted well, the city could benefit from it just on a national scale easily. So that's been really fascinating. Right now, my goal as a Trout Scout is being out and trying to find any of the native fish. One thing that wasn't mentioned was that the adipose fin had been clipped on all the fish that were translocated. And so what I've been looking for are fish with no clipped adipose fins. And that's been the major goal of mine every time I'm out there looking for fish. And that's been really fun. So
thank you, Dusty.
Yeah.
Dusty's been great because he's so enthusiastic, and I think he's better at finding fish snorkeling than I am. So it's always great to have him there.
There was a moment where you know, Angel had brought a flashlight, and we had surveyed this one pond, one pool, and hadn't really seen anything. And I just said, you know, let me go back in there with the flashlight. And that's when we found that really big trout. And as the water temperatures rose, the trout got deeper and deeper into those little tiny cool sections right up against the rocks. And had we not had a flashlight, we wouldn't have seen it at all. We would have just totally missed it. So
yeah, with all of those wooded areas, and the crevices, you can't see that with just, you know, your blind eye. And we're out there in the morning too. So having underwater flashlights has been a great help, not only for footage, but just finding fish.
Definitely, yeah. And there are good sized fish in places that you wouldn't expect them to be in the Arroyo. I mean, at the water level that it's at, I'm completely astounded that the size of the fish that are thriving out there are even present. I've gone up above Gould Campground, and it seems that where the road, there's a concrete section with a spillover. I haven't seen any trout past that. But I've talked to another fisherman. Both of us have been up to the dam, and we both had a hook into something that felt really large there at the dam, and both of us had lost the opportunity to prove that it was really there. So there is some sort of mystery superfish up at the dam, and I think you get one chance at getting that guy, you know, and pulling him out. But I haven't heard of anyone doing it yet. So.
And Dustin is now the second person who's brought that same story as well, of this mysterious fish right at the dam. Steve Olivas, one of our own as well, believes, because he caught it once, and he's very certain that this is not a relocated fish from Fish and Wildlife, because the relocated fish, and I'll mention this again in my presentation, have a clipped adipose. And he believes that fish does not. So he's been going out there again, hoping to get that fish and to get that photo evidence that we need.
So that's 3 of that story about that fish at that dam that I've heard. So
we snorkeled in there, and it's too the waterfall just turns up the sediment too much. We can't see anything.
Yeah. But you know, I think it's the road, the concrete kind of road spillover that's going to keep any of those translocated fish from moving up past that point. I don't think that those fish are going to be able to jump without a high water event. They're going to be stuck there. So I think between JPL, I mean, not even JPL, like even above the diversion is where you start seeing the fish. And then you don't see any, I haven't seen any up past that road spillway other than the one in the dam. But that means that there must be more around that area. So timing seems really important as far as fishing goes. I know this is an aside, but in the Arroyo, the water temperature as it warms up over the day and as it gets heavily, foot trafficked with people stomping through it and dogs and everything, the fish just completely turn off at about 8:30, 9:30 in the morning. It's just done. So you got to get out there. They all get into those holes and those crevices, and they're just there all day.
Thank you, Dustin.
Yeah.
Steve, can you share a bit about your experience as well? Steve is one of our veteran fishermen who's been out there practically every week there with us and giving us his expertise of over the years and decades of fishing.
Yeah, I've been out, I don't know, 4 or 5 months every weekend. I look at things with a fisherman's eye, and where the fish would be. It's a tough life being a fish in the Arroyo. It really is. You got a lot of people who want to eat you, birds and other animals. But where they are, is the fact that they have survived. I mean, I've seen fish that are not transplanted from the Fish and Game Department, that were there, that have been there. Their families have been there for thousands and thousands of years. And when the LA Times came in, I asked them, I mean, what are you going to do with the water when you've got a federally endangered species coming in there? They're going to put steelhead in that river, and the steelhead were there first. Human beings weren't there first. Steelhead were there first. So how are you going to do it? How are you going to, you spend all this money on the LA River to make it palatable for steelhead, and then they're going to hit a dead end when they get to the Arroyo? I don't know. It's a difficult question. And the other thing is, I got to be frank with it, there's not very much water up there. There really isn't. And you've seen for yourself, Angel, that the water level keeps dropping. Every time I go up there, it has dropped a little bit more and a little bit more. So how much more can you take? So I'd like the city to just stop for a second and say, let's think about this. Let's make some good, solid decisions, especially about the trout. But it's been a wonderful experience to learn. And I've talked to a lot of people who are mesmerized when you go up there. You see Boy Scouts, and I don't know how many bicyclists I've seen and how many people with dogs and things. And they say, and people have asked me, what are you doing? Well, we're trying to count trout. There's trout in the Arroyo. A lot of people have no conception that there's a trout in that Arroyo. And they walk right past them a lot of times, because we've been in areas where there's a little hole, there's a little trout, and there'll be foot traffic going crazy. So it's been a great experience, and I continue to do it. But I don't know. I think it's going to be a long, hot, dry summer, personally.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Steve. I appreciate that. Gary, would you like to share anything? Gary is also one of our Trout Scouts and a fantastic member, and working member, and my personal note taker. There you go. If I'm in the water, Gary's taking notes.
And it's waterproof, which I didn't show up with originally. When I first started doing this, I had this Office Depot version in paper, which, let me tell you, doesn't work well, because no sooner had Angel giving me this book, and sure enough, I had an accident and it was right into the stream, and it works. But I love doing it. And, I am not someone who fishes recreationally and don't have much of a background there. In fact, when I tried my hand at fishing in general elsewhere, I really wasn't very good at it. But I am enamored with the idea of steelhead returning to the LA River and making that connection literally with the Arroyo Seco and other tributaries of the LA River, the overall broader network habitat of that fish. I just think it's just a fascinating idea. And how I got involved was I'm actually was a part of the program to become a certified naturalist with the California Naturalist Program, and I need to do a capstone project. And so I just reached directly out to Tim and Angel and said, hey, you guys need any help? And next thing you know, I'm hooked, so to speak, pun intended. And I'm out there every week with Angel and team, and it's just been such a rewarding experience. I love doing every second of it. Can't get enough of it, really, to be honest. It's just so much fun. And we've seen so many different things. And to Laura's point, she mentioned earlier about iNaturalist, when we're not looking for fish, I'm off to the side taking pictures of 50 different versions of mule fat or whatever I have, and I'm loading them up onto iNaturalist. But we see so much more. We see California newts. We see two-banded garter snakes, all kinds of things that you don't normally see. And a lot of those are species of concern. And so it's really important that we maintain this habitat and this treasure really for Pasadena. What is just completely mind-boggling to me is why it's so difficult, or apparently so, at least that's my impression, for them, meaning Pasadena, not to see, the value of new thinking, as I heard mentioned in this call earlier today. I think that's so important. I think, I just don't get it. Why is there such a hesitation to not want to do, or at least attempt to try to do what might be better for the whole watershed and for the whole entire Arroyo Seco region? But I see that Angel had posted in the chat, if you want to join us, contact him. I have to tell you, it's been really rewarding, and there's a lot of camaraderie and kindred spirit between us when we go out there every week. And if you can make it, I highly encourage you to sign up and come along.
They tease me all the time. Daryl, one of the veteran fishermen, every time I put on my wetsuit and I have to remove my shirt, he's always going, "Mommy, what is that man doing?" And it's like, I can't stand up. No, thank you. So thank you, Gary, so much for sharing that. So I do have a presentation, and I do want to go through a bit of that with some of those points. But is there any questions so far? I might be able to answer them through the presentation anyway. Okay, so let me begin with that presentation. Okay, so save the Arroyo Trout. As we've already seen before with Steve and Gary and Dusty, this is also a bit about community growing. We have a whole diverse amount of people coming with us to these trout scouting. We've amassed more than 220 volunteer hours of just free labor. So it's been fantastic just how much of a commitment and love and passion that people have about not only seeing these fish, but protecting them as well. And as you can see, that's Dusty right in the center in that nice pool of water in the Arroyo. And there's me in the corner with the underwater light. As for those of you who don't know, Trout Scouts is a citizen science project with the Arroyo Seco Foundation, where we look to identify, measure, count, monitor growth, as well as any of the river conditions that the trout are experiencing, as well as other native fish. We continue to search for heritage trout, which is trout that have been there for thousands, if not millions of years of evolution and adaptation in the Arroyo, as well as other native fish. Now, these are photos I swiped straight from LA Times because, they're pretty good. We were on the LA Times as well on the front page on June 17th, 2021. You can look up that article if you'd like. The article itself paints a bigger picture about connecting our efforts to the LA River, the restoration of the steelhead and what that would take, as well as the current and future crisis of water management. For those of you who don't know, rainbow trout and steelhead trout are the same species, but they have different life histories. A rainbow trout that goes to the ocean becomes a steelhead trout and will come back to the mountain streams such as the Arroyo to spawn eggs, and those eggs can hatch into rainbow trout. If we want steelhead to come back, we have to get the rainbow trout to the ocean and back, which is why it's so imperative that with the Arroyo Seco Canyon Project that there is fish passage and enough water to go back and forth, as well as to connect with restoration efforts in the LA River. As mentioned earlier, CDFW, Cal Fish and Wildlife, relocated a whole bunch of fish from the San Gabriel's and rescue effort after the recent fires from last year to the Arroyo Seco. They put in fish about 5 inches or less. We have found not a lot, but the Trout Scouts and we have found a few trout that have reached 8 to 9 inches, such as the one that I showed you in the video before. There's not a lot of them, and they are so well hidden. And they are in pools, small pools that you would not suspect with just a few feet of water that they would be in there, but they're there holding out, and they are so quiet. I remember I was in the water and I was like, okay, there's a few young juvenile fish. And I just happened, I should probably look to my right. And there it was, just hidden, nestled in underneath the crevice of a boulder. And that's what they're doing to get away from, predators. CDFW with the relocated trout, they have the adipose fin clipped, which is that small fin behind the dorsal fin. If that's been clipped or even sloppily clipped, that means it's a relocated trout. for us, we're not only monitoring them, but we're also looking for evidence of heritage trout, which is any trout that we find that has that clipped intact, or we're finding trout that could be newborns of the recent relocated ones. Particularly, we found 3 of us have found fingerlings, very, very small, smaller than the size that CDFW has planted, with intact adipose. We are eagerly awaiting CDFW's recent report in the Arroyo survey. We believe that we have found either historic trout or trout that have been born from these relocated. There's some skepticism of this, so we're really looking forward to see that report, and then we're hoping that they find what we found as well. Because myself, Dusty, and Thea, we've been in the water, we saw underwater. It wasn't like we were on the surface. We were in there monitoring them and looking at them and saying, that's the adipose fin. We're also looking into the CDFW Trout in the Classroom program, where CDFW actually gives you a few trout eggs to raise either in the classroom or somewhere else. And once they get bigger, you can release them back into the wild. It'd be a great idea to have them at the Huhamunger Nursery with an appropriate aquarium, and it would be a good outreach tool and education tool for the public. And it'd be a great event to release them out there with people as well. I know that we're in connection with BioCitizen LA, as well as with other groups and people, and that'd be a great thing to do as well. And to get you up and close to the fish also. And outreach and education particularly is very important, considering that recent evidence is pointing that the extinction of steelhead trout could definitely happen and is within the future if certain actions are not taken, such as the diversion of water, as well as dams and other things as well, and that this extinction could happen between 50 to 100 years. Currently, the Trout Scouts are looking to scout the tributaries of the Arroyo Seco watershed. These are historic drainages into the Arroyo Seco that have little or no research involved in them. These are canyons that include Chiquita, Millard, forgive me, the phone's ringing, it just tends to happen. Chiquita, Millard, Prieto, Fern, Agua Falls, Twin, Dark, Woodwardia, and Bear and Little Bear Canyon. Not all of these canyons may have water currently right now, but if they do, they could be the final holdfast for some of these historic trout, as well as other native fish. And so our mission is to have an expedition into these areas to see if they're still out there. And even if they're not out there, that just gives us even more importance to the trout that have been relocated to the Arroyo Seco. According to UC Irvine, they have the Pisces database, which takes historic data as well as current data and gives us a list of native fish that are present within or have been present in that watershed. For the Arroyo Seco watershed, for which we are a part of, this includes the steelhead rainbow trout, the Arroyo chub, the Santa Ana speckled dace, as well as the Santa Ana sucker. These are fish species that, once again, have had historic and or current survey or sightings at the Arroyo Seco watershed. Currently, right now, we are surveying Miller Canyon. As of now, we've done about 1.3 miles of the creek. We've only found so far the California newt. We've now passed Millard Falls, because there is a fall running there. Right behind it, the water seems to go underground into the groundwater aquifer, but we are seeing pulls as we further get up there. So we're looking to get past the Dawn Mine and into the headwaters, which is about 3 miles further up into that canyon. And it also includes 2 small tributaries. There has also been a strange flow that the Trout Scouts and I have found last week at the Arroyo Seco. This flow seems to be coming from a pipe below the diversion facility. It's coming from one single pipe. It's just pumping water into the arroyo. This is a new flow. It's been dry beforehand. We're not too sure what this is about. This new flow has passed the JPL bridge as well. I snorkeled that entire reach where this new flow is coming from. We found no fish, which makes us suspect that this flow is screened and is blocking their migration through. But it seems to be giving perhaps tadpoles, because we did see them, as well as aquatic insect larvae. We've also seen right at the diversion facility these marked trees with a little metal tag. We're not too sure what that's about. I mean, we don't know if that's an anticipation for the Arroyo Seco Canyon Project and the redevelopment of the diversion where there. We don't know what that's about. Once again, when it comes to the Arroyo Seco Canyon Project, our mission, and we hope that you join us, is to convince City Council that this project cannot divert more water from the arroyo, that it is unsustainable for fish and it's unsustainable for the basin. So July 19th seems to be the new date now for reconvergence of the City Council and whether or not this project gets approved. We are asking if you're a veteran fisherman who's been out the arroyo all these decades and has memories, fond memories of fishing for trout and other fish, to please speak to City Council about the importance of the Arroyo Seco and of this biological resource and heritage when it comes to our culture, our people, and biodiversity. I have here an old photo of Holder, Charles Frederick Holder, who is one of the co-founders of the Tournament of Roses Parade, and wrote a naturalist book, which included a whole chapter about his wonderful victories and experiences of fishing steelhead trout right at the arroyo. And so there is just tons of history that connects us to the city of Pasadena. And it'd be a shame if that was removed, particularly considering our connection to the Tournament of Roses now, that this was founded by a guy who used to fish right at the Arroyo Seco. So if you need the assistance, if you need to take a quick photo of this slide, or if you need to, just to get the links or so forth, these are some links in order to contact City Council. For public comment, you can follow that link. That will lead you to speak at City Council for a period of time. I'm not entirely sure how much time they give you. You can also do a written correspondence of any length, and you can give that at the correspondence at cityofpasadena.net. And you could also watch the live stream of the City Council meeting via that link as well at pasadenamedia.org. I'll give one more moment to have that slide up there. Future studies, we're looking particularly into comparing the fish abundance in the seasons. I've been in contact with professors from Pasadena City College as well as Laverne, and they are interested in bringing their students out here in the fall to do some field biology experiments as well as experience as well into field ecology. And so for us, that's just a great way to build that community around us and to raise awareness. As well as we're going to look into fish passage barriers, as well as to the study of the removal, if not the remodeling, of the Brown Mountain and Devil's Gate Dam, which is the big hurdle when it comes to restoring habitat for steelhead trout. So if you want to get further involved, once again, the Trout Scouts Citizen Science Program, you can email me at angel@arroyoseco.org. Let the river flow. Thank you very much.
And that concludes the major part of our discussion this evening. Would anyone have any questions or want to make any comments at this time? 870-954-11619. You have been.
Yes, I'm sorry. I don't know. That's the first time in this year and a half of Zooming that instead of my name, Carol Sochek King, being up there, there's the number.
Well, we're sure glad you're here, Carol. Thank you for coming.
Oh, I've been here the whole time and it's wonderful and
That's
it breaks
great.
my heart. I don't see how anyone could think of anything being more important than to restore the water and the habitat and all of our wonderful sand toads and everything in the arroyo. It just seems such a natural thing for people to know and care about. I'm so glad you do and what you're doing. And I wrote my notes in the chat, but I was just thinking for people that are slower than me, or I don't know how to photograph or capture a screen, I will do it. I can write. My councilman is Steve Madison, and I know Taka Suzuki, his field rep, but I just had that, the correct name that, on that Monday, you're meeting about the right name of what they're meeting about and the email address, or I have Steve Madison's email address in this case. It would just be helpful because then I would sit at my computer, I'd see that email to me and I would convert it into my email to them. And since I'm like that, I was just thinking that would be helpful to other people too, because that information you just put up on the screen, I don't have it. I'll create my own, but if it wouldn't be too hard to
No,
just
that's a
send it
great
out.
idea. That's a great
Thank
idea,
you.
Carol.
I don't, you have so much to do. I
Yeah.
don't mean to
Oh,
give
well,
a task.
no.
But it could be just,
It's
you already
it's
have
part
it
of what
on
we
your
want to do.
computers.
We have everyone's email. Everyone registered
Yeah,
for this
so
event,
just-
so we have their email. So we will send you a message tomorrow or the next
Yeah,
day
really simple.
that will
simple, short.
contain, the information about how
The
to
right title to call it.
how to send
Yeah.
it, how to send a message, or how to show up at the council hearing or whatever.
Okay.
And your personal observations are just really important and make a big difference to the council people, and to the city itself. So
Thank you.
Ezra Hamill just joined us. Welcome. Anyone else let's see, were there any comments that we should be noting here? Let's see. Angel gave some information about how to send a message in public comment, and also correspondence of any length to the city of Pasadena. Paul Felix says, thanks for a terrific presentation, much appreciated, and definitely a call to action. Rebecca Stempner says, thanks again, good night. Carol Suche King. How do you say it, Carol?
I'm going to tell you, it is Carol Sochek King.
Sochek King, yes. She
Yeah.
says, must save our fragile nature. And also, you're marvelous to be contributing so much to this issue of importance. I've lived in the Arroyo. She really has lived in the Arroyo too. Right there under, in the area, the natural stream area beneath the bridges in the middle of Pasadena. And I've lived, I
So
live,
important.
lived in the Arroyo for 42 years and have seen our creek diminish. Must not be allowed to happen. Thank you so much. And Rebecca earlier said, thanks so much for all the work you're doing. I'm naive to all this and I'm learning so much. Daniel Clinton notes that trout are smart, and that's definitely true. And let's see, what else? The other ones were kind of dealt with earlier with Tony Zampiello and some of the water issues as well. I just want to thank you all for coming this evening very much. And we'll have another meeting soon coming up of Arroyo Currents. And if you're not on our mailing list, please, go to our website and sign up. We'd like to make sure that you get regular updates. We also have a Facebook page and an Instagram page. And we'd like to encourage you also to visit Haamungna Native Plant Nursery, which is our nursery that we run in Haamungna Watershed Park. And it's got more than 100 native species to beautify your yard and garden. And it's a wonderful place to come. And we hope that you'll come by and see us soon at Haamungna Native Plant Nursery. And with that, I'd like to close for the evening. Thanks so much for joining us, and let your friends know. Make sure to contact your council member or the mayor. If you don't live in Pasadena, contact them all. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank
And
you,
with that,
Tim.
we'll
Thank
close
you,
the meeting.
Angel. Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you, Laura. I think you
night.
can. Bye-bye.